Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ, coming at you. Today's episode of JJ Meets World features Prairie Rose Seminole, a good friend of Tucker and I's, and probably one of the coolest people we've ever met. We have a great discussion that goes all over the place, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. Also, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating wherever you consume the podcast that you love, whether it be iTunes, Spotify, and hey, click that subscribe button too. And if I could ask you just one more thing before we get this going, stay tuned because we got a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I'm a popcorn snob. I love popcorn. I like it a particular way. And when I got a job working at the Fargo Theater, I perfected popcorn. And here's the deal. It's not a one-size-fits-all, because popcorn, depending on the size of the vessel you're consuming it from, changes. So, for example, if you're someone who likes artificial butter topping, which is really just oil when it boils down to it, you're putting it into a big container. Are you adequately dispersing that? Versus a smaller container, it's easier, but it's much more common to overwhelm, because you're getting you want to do a whole pump, but a whole pump isn't good for a small popcorn. So here's JJ Gordon's rule of thumb. You want a medium-sized popcorn because you kind of straddle that not enough but too much, but you need to salt it in layers. If you think you're salting the top and it's going to get all the way to the bottom, you are a fool. Popcorn is a fickle mistress because it is very absorbent. It's got a lot of nooks and crannies to hold kernels of salt, little saltlets. So here's what you want to do. Tell them you want to salt it halfway through. Have them scoop it in, and if they scoop it to like 3/4 full or 2/3 full, you ask them to dump some out, because this is your popcorn. And more often than not, when you're at the movie theater, you are spending equivalent to like 2 hours worth of work to purchase that popcorn.
Are you someone who ever puts like M&Ms in your popcorn, or is that sacrilegious to you?
No, I don't like putting M&Ms in there. I've been known on occasion, if someone wants to throw Raisinets, Bunch of Crunch, maybe even some Junior Mints, I'm fine with that. But I think popcorn is perfect the way it is.
You know, Even though I love cinema, rarely do I go to the movie theater because oftentimes I'm not interested in what's coming out unless it's like a superhero movie. And even just going to the theater, the experience of it is changed from what I really liked when I was a kid, where, I mean, yes, everything's more expensive, but you're also surrounded by people who have cell phones that go off, and there's pluses and minuses to it. But I will say, not even having the option right now to go to a movie theater has made me crave going to the movie theater. And I don't think I'll care what movie it is, but when theaters open back up again, I just can't wait. So you and I, we got to go. We got to do our Burger King double cheeseburgers that we hide in our hoodies. And then we got to go in and get the popcorn just right. Maybe get some peanut M&Ms and a giant Pepsi that's going to make me have to pee 3 times throughout the movie. But I look forward to having those kind of pleasures again.
I think that sounds like just a little slice of heaven. And today's episode of JJ Meets World actually ties all these things together because we talk to our good friend Prairie Rose Seminole. And we've been trying to get Prairie on the show for a while. Luckily, during this time of quarantine, she had some moments available to us. So we jumped at the opportunity. We worked with her at the Fargo Theater. She's somebody who I have seen a lot of movies with over the years. In fact, I remember going to the movie that featured all the Beatles music, Across the Stars, seeing that with her in Chicago. I vividly remember that experience for some reason. But she's also probably one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met, because she... I don't know if you would call her, I don't know what you would label Prairie as far as like her advocacy, but I do at one point in this conversation figure out a way to quantify the power she has for influencing me and other people as she goes along. And I just think she's such a cool person.
Yeah, I'd say, I think the word I would use to describe, if I had to distill Prairie down into one word, it would be champion. She is a champion for people who need one. And I've known Prairie for a long time. In my heart, I think of Prairie as my sister from another mister. Prairie is awesome. She's one of the warmest people you will meet. She wears her heart on her sleeve, and she fights. She fights for people who need someone to fight for them. And that is something that was apparent with her even back in high school, and she sticks to it today. So Prairie is just someone I'm really proud to call my friend, and we've wanted to get her on the podcast for a while, and I'm really happy we finally were able to make it happen, because not that she didn't want to do it, but Prairie is someone who just doesn't let the grass grow under her feet. She is constantly in motion because there is always a need, and there's always a need for someone to address the needs. So I'm just so glad we got Prairie in the studio, the virtual studio today.
I think that you're going to really enjoy this episode, podcast listeners. Prairie's just one of the all-around greatest people ever, and she's friends with a major celebrity, so stick around till the very end. In fact, a couple of them, because we get to talk about how she just casually throws around these people that she gets to interact with right now. So I would like everyone to enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World, featuring our good friend, Prairie Rose Seminole.
JJ Meets World.
Welcome to JJ Meets World, Prairie. It's been such a long time since I've had a chance to chat with you. How are you doing, girl?
I'm good. It's been, I can't even think of the last time we got to hang out. It's been a while.
I think I randomly ran into you on the street several summers ago, but I almost can't even remember your face. Do you remember my face?
Of course I remember your face.
Could you sketch it for me?
I could, actually. I will. I'll do that while we talk right now. I remember the last time I kind of saw you in passing was the turkey trot, like 3 years ago, maybe.
Oh,
You were, emceeing. It was way too early for any of us to function coherently. And my sisters were forcing me to run a 5K. So.
And how did that 5K go for you?
I finished it.
Good for you. Sometimes, isn't that the most important thing in life, is just finishing, whether or not the end product is what you envisioned at the beginning. It is just a matter of yep, I can say it's done. I can shut the door.
Yep, I agree.
I am a person. So now that I'm a homeowner, I am the person who does 90% of every project around the house, and I never finish them. And when I mean 90%, I mean I've got a beautiful bathroom with a tiled shower. It's got a brand new toilet. Everything is perfect, but I have not finished just nailing in these wooden boards to surround the bathtub to finish it. And because it's not completely finished, my air compressor is in that shower. So I am going on year 5 of not being able to use said bathroom.
Come on, JJ. You can do
I
this.
know. Today, you know what? Today, I'm going to be inspired by your 5K, and I'm going to finish that bathroom today,
Just finish
or
it.
tomorrow,
Just finish it.
or some before the end of the year for sure. Prairie, for those people listening to our podcast who maybe don't know you, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Prairie Rose Seminole. I am. It's rumored that I moved out of North Dakota, which I understand why people would think that, because I put a big post on accepting a job with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America over 4 years ago. But I actually never moved out of North Dakota. The ELCA is headquartered out of Chicago. So, 2 votes away from being Minneapolis, which is the Lutheran Mecca of North America. But I've been working with the Lutherans for just over 4 years. I'm a tribal member of the 3 affiliated tribes in Western North Dakota. My background is in public office and politics and theater and creative arts. I kind of do a lot of things and am interested in a lot of social issues, environmental issues, and I continue to do the work for those who are underrepresented. I like to bring that voice to the table since it's my own lived experience, but being in the field that I am, I can do a lot of good, and I like to use my powers for good. So that's a little bit about me.
And it's funny that you use that, because I was going to say you are probably one of the most influential people I know in my entire life. And not in the way that you go on Instagram and tell people about a great, skin cream, but you're one of those people that when you see something in the world that grabs your attention and you're passionate about, you can really rally people around whatever it is, even if it's a cause, if it's just some cool event that's happening. I've always been incredibly impressed at your ability to be the one to get everyone going. Sort of like if you're in a car, you always are going to have some place to go for dinner, because if Prairie will not be the one to say it doesn't matter to me, wherever everyone else feels like, she will be the one to be like, no, everyone, we're going to decide on where we're going to have dinner tonight.
Yeah. Prairie, I remember you telling me a story once about when you were in high school or something, and you had to get a note from some government official from another country or something to be, I'm trying to remember the exact parameters of it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Tell me what you remember.
I remember you saying something like you weren't going to get credited for time that you had spent. Oh,
that's right. Yes, I was supposed to go. I'm remembering now. So actually, I was being sent Trowwood Performing Arts School at the time. Some of you might remember John Marks and Vicky Chapoulis, the executive directors at those times. And they had been a part of a selection committee to bring students to Moscow, Russia, to write a play. And there were 14 some odd countries represented there. And I got chosen, and I had to get permission from Fargo Public Schools to be the delegate. And then I ran up against, and this is my senior year in high school. So I ran up against an issue with Gary Mayu, the former, was he vice principal at North High?
He was a vice principal. Yep.
Jesus, all coming back now. But he wasn't going to give me school. What was it? Some sort of, it had to have validation of some sort to get to be a approved school dismissed time away from classes, and it was 2 weeks of being gone. In Russia, writing a play with all these other countries. It was this very Romeo and Juliet type of play in a global conflict. I mean, crazy how times are just really like that today. But so I had to get official documents from people associated with the delegation in Moscow and with the selection committee. And so group of educators just had my back at the time, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, this is pretty important and a huge honor, so you should totally approve this and give her the permissions needed for basically having perfect attendance my senior year in high school." But yeah,
That's
we got it. We got it all
amazing.
done. Yeah.
You
I
know,
think
what is it with
Mayor.
Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I think Mayor Furness at the time actually wrote a letter of support
That
too.
was it.
So
I remember that, like, you had to pull like a power move and basically go, listen, important people want me to do this.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I remember Mr. Mayo. He was there through my high school. I'm not sure if he's there anymore or not, but yeah.
yeah.
Shout out to
No.
Mr. Mayo.
Yeah, shout out.
Prairie, do you feel like sometimes your life is just like going against the man and you just go from situation to situation?
Uh, Not necessarily. I'm somebody who believes like we have this system that's around us, right? This infrastructure that's often invisible to those of us who just live our lives who benefit from this system, and it was built for us. But there are so many who fall through the cracks, and the little barriers that may seem little to us are huge barriers for some folks. And the reality is the systems just don't work for all of us, and they absolutely can. We just need people at the table making decisions who are aware of other people's realities that are not of their own lived experience. And it isn't so much about fighting the man, it's about really aligning hearts and mind of leadership in this city, in our nonprofits, our government services, our governance structures, our education structures, all of the institutions that are part of this infrastructure, to just create a environment that is not a one size fits all approach that may work for, the 60% of us it benefits, but for that other 40%, it just doesn't work. So it's not a constant fight, but I've learned a lot where, when we all first met, over 20 years ago, we were just kids, and I was definitely fists in the air. The man is against us. Like, let's burn this all down. And there's days and moments where I still have like, oh, let's just burn it all down. Just burn it all down, and we'll be fine. We'll start over. But I recognize that there's this intersection of the inside and the outside, like where advocacy and movement, like, have to ally with one another, and that really isn't easy to do, right? Like the movement part of what we see, the front lines of activism and those protecting, lands, water, fighting for housing rights, the environment, what have you. That's movement, right? And the inside are the decision makers and often elected leadership that doesn't always reflect the demographics that they serve. And when we can get them to meet, there's a lot of significant change that happens there. And I've seen some really beautiful things happen, and I'm proud of that work.
I think one thing you're kind of pointing at is the sort of, so many of us just don't realize the gaps in our empathy that we have because we haven't walked in the shoes of someone who didn't have the same resources, the same privileges, the same opportunities that we had. And you see it so often in civil discourse where, a politician, let's say as an example, regardless of party affiliation, might be against a law or a new idea until it benefits them or someone that they know of. And suddenly they have this ability to empathize. And I think one of the most effective things that I've seen, and Prairie, you do this better than anyone that I know, is they go and they build a bridge across that gap. They find a way to build empathy amongst people. And more often than not, it's that empathy that ends up winning the day. And it's too bad that it can often and usually is a slow and laborious process, because when we need change to happen, at the moment that we notice we need it to happen, we need it to happen now. And more often than not, it takes stubborn human beings a time to bridge that empathy gap. But once that bridge is built, it's to not to ruin the metaphor here, but it's a strong bridge. It seems to work. Is that part of your, your daily strategy? How does that fit into what you try to do?
The stories I'm really fortunate to collect in my own lived experience of other people's realities. And I don't like to say, I don't want to contribute to the narrative of othering people, right? Like there is no other,
Right.
but where we still speak in this language and of framing that for those who are making decisions and those who are not, whose lives those decisions affect. I get to see the beauty in this world and how people are resilient and making a life with the hand that they have. And we often think about the deficits of community, right? Like, here's the problem we need to deal with, whether it's homelessness or those who are hungry or those who are incarcerated and coming into our communities, or those who are in poverty, right? And those, like, it's a problem to be dealt with. And instead of, hey, here's the reality, like this exists in our community, so how are we meeting the needs so that we can decrease this? Like, what are the contributing factors that allow domestic violence to exist? What are the contributing factors that allow bullying in schools to exist, right? Until it becomes personal, nobody really makes those decisions. And so I have been able to have these stories, and oftentimes bring those stories, the people, into these spaces to put their own testimony in front of people, because you can't deny somebody's experience, right? Like you can tell me what happened to you, and I can't say, nuh-uh, like that didn't happen, right? Like, I mean, we can do that, we joke about that, but the reality is like, I can't take that experience away from you. And I shouldn't be the one denying that experience is happening in our communities. And it's sometimes a battle. It really is, because the dominant culture wants to believe that our communities are not what they are, that there's these realities that exist. And right now, during this pandemic, we're seeing even higher numbers of all the needs that are unmet by the infrastructures and systems around us.
Right.
And that's putting a lot of pressure on those services and on the people who meet the needs within those services. And that should be a testimony to then all the voters in the community, right? Saying, are we making the best decisions, right? It isn't about party, it's about what's personal. And we need to take the politics out of what's personal. Like, that's just, it's always been an issue. And I've been nonpartisan for a very long time. I mean, I think I had to come out as a Democrat in 2009 to make some big change. And at the federal level, where we were seeing that was within the Democratic Party, right? Like, not to bring politics into this conversation, but it was like, who's meeting the needs in the best way, or who's giving me the most hope to meet those needs.
Right. And they're definitely on the level of public discourse. Like it's both it's like, I don't even know how to feel about it sometimes, because there's so much diversity amongst groups, but then there's even more diversity amongst individuals. And like, you can both, you both want to support a group of people without patronizing or infantilizing them. And you also want to have fairness across the board whenever you can. It is such the pandemic is such a magnifying glass on the lack of opportunities and the inequality that we have in society. And sometimes I just, wish it didn't take this sort of level of suffering for people to see it. And you hope that they walk away with the right lessons, and that regardless of what happens, that there's hopefully a net positive income. So as far as like what you're kind of seeing right now, I mean, do you think that there are realities of at least American life that more people are waking up to? And do you think the lessons that COVID-19 are making obvious, or should be making obvious to us right now, do you think those lessons will stick?
That's the hard part, right? That people want to get back to some sense of normalcy, right? But the challenge is that this normalcy that we've known has been a big part of the problem that we're seeing now, because we all can go and live our day without thinking about people who are in need. And
Right.
the challenge that we have in front of us is like, what changes can I make that will contribute to a society that is more informed, more empathetic, that is meeting the needs of those underserved. I mean, we have people dependent on meals being delivered to them, whether it's families with children from the school systems or elders in the community. And those systems are at risk of being shut down as well, right? Like,
Right.
so after all of this, like, how do we get back to normal? How do we actually establish a new culture of caring, right? Of empathy, because that's who we're dependent on right now, the caregivers, those who are taking care of one another. There's people delivering food to the doors around us, and the elders, and making sure medicines are delivered. So we're pretty dependent on some of these systems that we took for granted in the beginning. And I don't have a list of what we each need to do, but I can say is there's what's developing in my mind are these expectations, right, of how we need to be with one another, right? It's scary that there's this group of people who are stockpiling guns and ammo, and
Right.
and it isn't even about the toilet paper, right? It's like they're thinking the worst. And I want to think the best. I want to think that we're going to come out of this more self-aware of these systems and infrastructures around us that contribute to everybody's day-to-day lives, but in a way that says, you know what, maybe the taxes I pay, it's okay that I'm paying for law enforcement and roads and school buses and teachers and public health. It's totally okay, right? And it's okay if they actually invest more into those services, because I find that I trust that my community is more safe because we're making those investments, that my community is more healthy because we're making those investments, right? Like, so to
Right.
me, it's this education, this expectation that we're much more aware, we're much more educated about these little invisible lines that touch us every day from these systems, and then trust that our governance system that we all contribute to as workers in the society is taking care of us, right? I want to
Right.
trust those systems. And right now, I'm having a hard time trusting those systems.
We just had a podcast that we just released that featured return guest Sarah Watson Curry, who's a Morin City Council member. And she made this great point about how the pandemic is really highlighting the fact that we live in a global society now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something that happens in China has an incredible effect on what happens in America. What happens in Italy has an incredible effect on what happens in South Africa. I mean, it's there is only us at the end of the day. There is
Mm-hmm.
no them on a broad scope of it, and we are all in this together. And that at the very least, as a global community, we are responding to a global threat for the first time that we've ever in a way that we've ever done before. And there is room and reason to hope in that context after the fact.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be able to trust that our leaders are talking with one another. Right now, we have an administration that holds grudges and isn't communicating with other leaders, leaders, global leaders, and how they're responding to this pandemic. And there's rumors out there that you don't want to believe that we're swiping medical supplies from other countries and privatizing those types of deals so that states have to compete with one another. Like, I don't want to believe that kind of stuff is happening. And if it is, as the American public, we should be aware that, you know what, maybe the leadership we have isn't making the best decisions. Because the way that China, Italy, and many other countries responded to this pandemic is very different to how we responded as a federal government. And we should have learned from that, right? And you can kind of see that influence state by state in how we're responding and what the priorities are with this administration. Like, I mean, you could see the correlation between a priority of the pipelines, for example. Most of the states that do not have a stay-at-home order, the one of the major industries that is coming through are the pipelines. Like, you see workers going to work without personal protective equipment, right? You see these things still being pushed through with states in compliance because it's a priority of the administration, right? So we just kind of have to question, like, what are the priorities of this administration when it clearly isn't the American public? If we all can't have access to protective equipment, if our hospitals are desperate need of personal protection equipment, like there's a reality here that the public has to have some practice of accountability in, whether that's the vote or just starting to ask questions. We just have to have those deeper dialogues around accountability, management, and then what we are learning from the public.
I think a lot of times when I consider what's wrong in my world and what things are frustrating me or I'm having difficulties living a life where I feel like I am contributing to the world and the world is then giving me back something, is I forget that it comes down to not just the day you vote for the person you want to represent you, but to write letters and to say, like, listen, your involvement in decisions being made on your behalf do not begin and end on a single day in November. You can write to the people who represent you. You can campaign for people opposite of the feelings that you have about one thing or another. And I think that we get so bogged down in the politics of the world that they're doing exactly what they want to, right? They are numbing you to the fact of where you're like, I just can't even stand to listen to this anymore. And, they're pushing you out in that way. And so out of sight, out of mind is a great way to get yourself elected.
Yep.
So
keep moving forward. Status quo.
Prairie, let's take a side from this. So at one point, the three of us all worked at the same institution, the Fargo Theater, a classic arts theater in downtown Fargo. And we had some really good times working at the Fargo Theater together.
We had the Black Hoodie Squad is what we called ourselves.
Oh, we did. We had such a good time.
Had the same one. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a time were you the operations manager? Was that what your title was?
Yes, that was one of my titles.
Yeah, because you did a lot of stuff there. Do you look back on that time and just think, like, man, can you believe how little we got accomplished during long hours? And then we're amazed at how much we accomplished in a small amount of time during some of those shifts.
What?
We did a lot. I mean, I just remember so much fun with our crew. Like, that brought me so much joy. When I started that position, there were a lot of issues happening that just weren't being taken care of. And I think there was just like this high turnover, but we were pretty consistent for a while, and it's maintained that, not that we're taking credit, but the leadership there now with Emily really has sustained this like consistency of staffing and this level of enjoyment of work. Like, we had a lot of fun. I mean, we had some big crashes though too. I mean, I'm not going to call anybody out, but there was some behind the scenes stuff that I wish we had some sort of social media more back then, but that was like brand new.
I will say that one of our coworkers, and I'm gonna out him right now, Sabin, made a mistake as a projectionist, honest mistake, but accidentally completely unspooled an entire Bollywood film which is typically like at least 2 hours longer than a standard like American film, and that's a lot of film that was unraveled on the floor of the projectionist booth. It was a complete accident. I love you, Saban. If you're listening, I know it didn't mean it, but then because of that, me and Sam Ishimshop had to spend a day going through and repairing it, and that became my trial by fire to become a projectionist. Actually, so at the end of the day,
that happened the day before that film was supposed to go up, and I mean, this is like a huge event for folks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do?
Right now, speaking of the Fargo Theater, though, I've said this in the podcast before, but I want to reiterate it again. The Fargo Theater is hit very, very hard by COVID-19, not just because they have to keep their doors shut right now, but it also forced the canceling of their single biggest fundraiser in the year, which is the Fargo Film Festival. Yeah. And so I am asking anyone who's locally here. I mean, obviously, we need to support all of our nonprofits to the best of our abilities. But when the Fargo Theater reopens its doors, I am planning on bringing as much of my dollar as I can there, because that is a cultural just institution of art and life to this area, that it would be an absolute tragedy if we had to lose it because of something like the pandemic.
It amazes me the fact that there are so many businesses that when they said it's going to be a 2-week shutdown a couple weeks ago, where they said, 2 weeks, we're going to take 2 weeks and be done. And they said 2 weeks is going to kill my business. It's going to close it. And I think, my gosh, how difficult it is to be in any business where if you're unable to make money during that 2-week span, you're not going to last. And you think of like how close all of us are, if your paycheck was taken away today, how long can you actually last before you are in dire straits? And it's not that long.
What are we at? 30% unemployment right now, I think? Something like that. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's the highest unemployment number we've ever had.
Yeah, I think it's at like 30. I think it's 36% was the last numbers I looked at. Yeah, the crazy piece is like, we're not learning from like the times of the Great Depression and World Wars, right? Where they focused on relief first. And this administration isn't doing that, right? Like we're giving ourselves this $1,200 loan as taxpayers to be taken out at another time. Like, it's just, the whole thing's kind of ridiculous in how it's set up. When you look at other countries, they're taking care of their public, and that's their taxpayers' dollars coming back to them in the form of relief, whether it's, an individual, family, or business. Corporations are a whole nother conversation, but they're taking care of them first and making sure that the front lines are stacked as well with medical equipment. We're not in the same boat as many of our global peers in how we're responding to this need. I know people are really excited about that $1,200, but it isn't enough. And for a lot of the people out here that are losing their jobs, I mean, we have industry workers who are looking at being homeless. Because we have landlords in North Dakota who are still demanding rent when people can't pay it. We have banks that are working with individuals to postpone payments without any penalty. Unemployment benefits that you kind of hit it, JJ, where the systems are not ready for all of these immediate changes right now. Whether it's the SBA websites or even our unemployment websites at the state levels, and even our banks, right? Like, you can apply for these loans from specific banks, but they're just not equipped yet with the fast changing policies that are just being rolled out as recent as 3-4 weeks ago now, however recent that was.
Let me ask you this question. So Jill and I were talking the other day of like, okay, so we're going to get $2,400 coming into our household right now. Knock on wood, both of us still are in jobs, and so we're great. But also, we're eating at home. I'm not going out and shopping on a regular basis. I am actually bulking up the most savings I have been doing in a long time. I don't know what the intention of the stimulus money is to an individual like myself?
Mhm.
Do they want me to go out there and buy a new car? Am I supposed to get a couch? Do they want me to put it into the stock market? Am I supposed to just put it in my savings and wait for the time when they say it's okay to go out and shop? If that's the case, why are we rushing to get it to people like myself? I find it so frustrating because they said we're going to get Americans money because Americans need money to make it through this. Well, let's slow the boat here. Yes, there are definitely people out there who need this right now, but maybe we should be a little more thoughtful about it because
Mhm.
there are folks out there who, quite frankly, there are some industries that are doing really well right now, providing certain services. And so I just don't get it. And I don't get it. I don't get what's supposed to happen or what I'm supposed to do with this. I understand when they have a program like Cash for Clunkers. You've got an old car, you bring it in, you get a more fuel efficient vehicle, and we take this one away and we help you get into that new car of yours. Congratulations. We've got the home buyer program. We want to help you get out of a situation where you are just paying rent if you want to be a homeowner. We've got this thing and we're ready to make it happen for you. But just giving me money now, you might as well just give me a bunch of frozen crab legs. That's what would be more beneficial to me right now. Some frozen seafood than just straight up cash. So where do I go? What website do I go to put myself in that category? Also, I'm going to throw this out there because I'm just on a rant and I'm going to make it happen while I'm going. North Dakota, at the last time I checked, had less than 50% response for the United States Census.
Oh my gosh, people, take that census, get it done.
Oh my God, it took me 2 minutes.
Yep.
What are you doing that's more important? I guarantee that episode of Ozark will still be on Netflix. It boggles my mind where we get to the situation where we're not even doing the little things that we could be asked of to do while we're in quarantine.
For real. Oh my gosh, no, take the census. I mean, the stimulus money aside, like the census dollars, that those invisible lines of infrastructure that touch you every day, the law enforcement, the roads, the hospitals, public health, the schools, like all of that comes from that census money, the over $687 billion that our Congress will make decisions on is directly impacted by those census numbers. So if you're undercounted in those communities, that actually prevents you from not only those dollars, but other opportunities like the economic corridors that come through other packages within our congressional delegations making decisions about what was it that they did in Grand Forks, creating this whole economic corridor in the Red River Valley because the population grew. Businesses will be attracted to your communities because you might have 20,000 people there versus 5,000 that you had 10 years ago, right? Like, you want to take the census, you want to get the best opportunities for your community, and that really comes from accurate counting. And those of you who are like talking about the $1,200, like, I know you're not saying it's pocket change, JJ, but there's mutual aid networks redistributing stimulus checks for folks who want or who need extra cash or need support, like to nonprofit organizations. So those are out there. Like, find those organizations who are doing the redistribution of the stimulus checks for folks who actually are hurting during these times.
That's how we get a Trader Joe's in
For
this
real.
area, is if we fill out our census forms and people are like, oh, they do have the population to have a Trader Joe's. Well, we'll get one opened ASAP. Thanks for letting us know, census.
Not only the population, but the income levels of the population will get you a Trader Joe's.
God,
Yes.
right? Here's a census. So I knew, Tucker, do you know what year we lived together?
That would have been 2004, I believe.
Right.
Because right after high school, I lived with Prairie's brother.
Yeah.
And we lived together for a couple of months. And then I moved in to Dad's place after that. So actually, it would have been, I think, going from 2003 to 2004, I think it was over that section of time maybe that we lived together.
I remember during that time, they did some kind of like localized census that was going on. And I was living at your dad's house with you, and somebody knocked on the door and they needed information about the people in the house. And I was like, listen, I shouldn't be giving you this information. This is a private family home. And she's like, yeah, but you live here, don't you? And I said, well, yeah. And she's like, well, just give me information about your family. And I said, they're not my family. And she gave me this look of like, is there somebody tied up in the basement? And I felt very awkward. But I provided all the information I could. And I was like, okay, so there's a high school age girl and a man and then 2 young men who live in this house. And she's like, okay. And what would you say is the median income of everyone? And I said, I don't know. Do you have some options? Is there an A, a B, and a C? But yeah, the census is so easy. Everyone should just take it and get it done with, because I don't know. Have they decided fully that they're not going to have door to door at all, right? Like they're not going to knock.
They definitely changed the field campaign for the census because of the pandemic. I mean, they were making a hire of like 2 million field workers. Like, I forget how big that was. I should know. I was just at a meeting with Dillingham, who's the director of the census, and yeah, they had to put everything on hold. They're definitely increasing their social media usage, their mail campaign, their advertising, but their field campaign can't go door to door anymore. So they're changing up how they can actually do that, because they already made a bulk of their hires across the country. And so that's why they're pushing the online thing. Plus, the online thing is so easy. Like, if you don't do the online thing, that's when they were going to show up at your door and start doing the count there. But yeah, they've definitely had to shift things because of this pandemic.
I've got an idea, and it's going to cost you $10,000, but I guarantee I can get the rest of the people in Fargo to get their census form done. You're going to outfit me with an old van and a bullhorn, and I will pull into people's driveways and say, hello, resident, we did not receive your census form. Please fill it out. I'll just wait here in the driveway until I get electronic verification. And if you don't have the internet, I will provide one of these bomb, like the things the bomb squad uses, and it's got an iPad on it. So I'll just drive it right up to your door. Even if you're on the second floor of an apartment, don't worry. These things can go up and down stairs, no sweat. And that's my idea. I'm going to take it to the streets. Like that song, about taking it to the streets. I think it was called Jenny from the Block. This podcast.
You should tweet the census, by the way. Tweet the Census Bureau. They're very responsive. I think they might like your idea.
Really? So I'm gonna throw some shade at the Census Bureau real quick. I attempted to get an interview with them for my radio show last fall because I saw that billboards are starting to go up about hiring, and they said unless I could provide them a list of questions, the exact questions that would be asked in the exact order I was planning to ask them, they would not do an interview. And I thought, well, man, who burned you guys on radio interviews at some point? Who said like, okay, well, let's start off with this easy question. The census, some people say, is, and then you get into something that's just like a horrible side question. Like, listen, I'm a lifestyle show, guys. I'm going to be like, let's get some people hired for you. And what color is the form this year? Blue? Cool. So they denied me, but then they gave somebody else an interview. So I will tweet them. That's a great idea, Prairie. I'll tweet away. This would not be a complete interview if we did not discuss one of the greatest road trips of my entire life, which was when we went to Chicago together. You, me, and previous guest Dave Ranow, aka Baggies. That was such a fun trip, and I think about that fondly all the time. About like, that was probably the best 12 hours I've ever spent in a car, and it was so much fun, and we had great discussions. And sometimes I think I wish I could go back in time just a little bit, just a smidge, and relive some of those moments in my life. But I'll just be able to hold on to the memories, I guess, at this point.
That's what we got to do, unfortunately. I mean, I would totally love to road trip. That's funny you bring that up, because I was supposed to road trip to Chicago for my birthday, which Tucker and I have close to dates. Birthdays, mine's March 30th and his is April 1st. And I was totally going to be road tripping to Chicago, but this darn pandemic
Yeah.
making us change all our plans.
You and I are part of an exclusive club of COVID birthdays where the birthday was just, yeah, there's, you know what? It's actually reminding me of a line from Parks and Recreation when Ron Swanson gets married to his third wife, played by Lucy Lawless, and they go and they do a quickie wedding up at the fourth floor of the building. And he goes, "Thank you, everyone. The wedding reception shall be held in each of our individual houses alone." And that's kind of how birthdays have been going right now.
Yep. Well, I heard we stay the same age until we can actually celebrate with people. So.
Oh, good. I can't wait to turn 35 next February.
Prairie, do you like the show Jag?
I don't think I've ever seen Jag.
Here. Well, it started in 1995, okay? And it ran for 227 episodes. It follows the cases of Harmon Rabb, who's a former Navy fighter pilot, and his fellow lawyers of the U.S. Navy's Judge Advocate General Office. Judge Advocate General, that's how they get the word JAG. It's a really good show.
Where's this going?
I've been trying to really tell people a lot lately about the show Jag and how they should give it a try. Because here's the thing. Nobody ever is talking about like, oh, I own all of Jag on DVD. That's one of the things. Everyone owns the first season of Lost and stuff like that. Some people have all of Monk or Psych. But Jag, ooh, it's a procedural drama, but it's all about the Navy.
I was more of an NCIS type fan, and
Law and Order all the way for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what NCIS stands for? I don't.
Gosh. I used to.
Because it's about the Navy too, right? Like,
yes.
Is it, or is it more of like
Naval Criminal Investigative Service?
Squad. Let's just call it Squad.
Yeah, let's do Squad. I like Squad. It is the Navy. Navy criminal? Hold on. I'm going to Google it. Where's my phone at?
Yeah, because, I mean, Mark Harmon, cut me off a piece of that guy, right? I like it. NCIS, according to the Internet Movie Database, has 398 episodes. Oh my God. That is a lot of episodes of this series. It started in 2003 and it still must be running, huh? It's still airing new episodes on the 17th season. But yeah, the Naval Criminal Investigation Service, Washington, D.C. Major Case Response Team, led by Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs.
That Jethro.
Here's the thing. I know quite a bit about maritime law, which is law that applies to things that take place on the sea or other bodies of water. Because did you know, like, have you ever done any research? Well, maybe I'm the only one to answer this, but research of like where jurisdiction begins and ends when it comes to like being on the open water? Nobody?
No.
Isn't it like 30 miles out or 50 miles out or something like that?
Yeah. And then it ends. And then
That's crazy.
When you think about like 30 miles in a boat, to me is a long way. Like when I think of being on a speedboat, like going rum, 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 rum for 30 miles, I want to throw up. But after you get out there, anything goes, which is why we have all of these naval procedural shows, because people are like, it's the Wild West when you get out to the sea, man. Anything goes. You can go out there and you can form your own business and you can make Baby Yoda figurines,
right?
And as long as someone purchases them, also in international water, man, there's no copyright. There's no copyright when it comes to international water.
There are a lot of these things called micronations that actually exist out in the ocean on like abandoned oil freighters and stuff, where it's like just outside the line where you would be within the jurisdiction of a nation state. So you're actually like in international waters. And then it's usually like one crazy guy who has a captain's hat and he's taken over this like derelict like thing and he's named it like New JJ Stan or something. and then they're just sort of like a micronation in and of themselves, and where they get to sort of announce that they are like the de facto ruler of all time. And I don't know if they like assess themselves for taxes or not, but maybe that's what you should do, JJ. Once you've moved on to the next phase of your career, maybe go start a micronation outside of out in international waters.
I mean,
Who
there are
knows?
worse
It might
things
lead to
I've thought about.
Waterworld. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about like the Great Lakes? Is it true for them, or because they're inside two countries? Is there like, does Canada and the U.S. just kind of like split them down the middle, or is there like a tiny little circle of space that is considered anybody's domain?
That's a really good question. I totally forgot that we shared the border of those lakes with Canada. You can never trust those Canadians.
Yeah, they're the worst. I think if memory serves, is you actually, so like the jurisdiction goes to the Coast Guard. So if you go out in the middle of the Great Lakes, let's say, and I steal Tucker's wallet, the investigation would technically have to be conducted by the Coast Guard, not the land cops, as they refer to them.
There's actually a website called greatlakeslaw.org that looks like it is completely about this. Of course, the latest article was 2008, so I don't think there's been a ton of innovation in Great Lakes law since then. But basically, it says the U.S. and Canada have a long history dating back to 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty of cooperatively managing and protecting their shared waters. So yeah, it sounds like there's just some kind of arrangement in place. I wonder if it's something like, and I'll have to look this up and correct myself if I'm wrong, but I think in Moorhead and Fargo, that if, say, you're a police officer that only has jurisdiction in one of them, and you're chasing someone, let's say you're in a car chase in Fargo, and then the car goes over the Main Avenue Bridge and goes into Moorhead, I believe you can continue the chase and complete the stop if it started in your state, and vice versa. At least I remember hearing that at one point. I
think you're right. I think you're right. But the jurisdiction of arrest goes to whoever, where they're at. Like, you can detain them, because this actually occurs with reservations, right? So most people may not know, but the reservation, our tribes, our lands, I mean, we're sovereign nations, so like highway patrol could come in unless the tribe has given jurisdiction to the highway patrol. They can't really give us any violations on our lands, right? But if you have jurisdiction, you can detain and arrest, right? So the jurisdiction stuff gets kind of tricky, but for the state stuff, if your car chase started in Fargo and ended up in Detroit Lakes, you'd have to have either highway patrol or Detroit Lakes officers on hand to like actually do an arrest. But you can detain and calm down a situation.
You know, that points at one of the really interesting parts of the structure of the United States, is that we have all these different territories with their own jurisdictions, and although it's changing at the moment with the pandemic temporarily, but we do have, freedom of movement between states without having to go through border checkpoints and things like that.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that oftentimes before something gets adopted at the federal level, you see a lot of states adopt things almost like they're small petri dishes of testing out different things. It's like a number of mini democracies within a larger democracy, or a republic, plutocracy for the most part. But that there's sort of like when good ideas take hold, there is an opportunity for them to spread to other states. And so it's what is true in New Mexico isn't necessarily going to be true in Texas, isn't necessarily going to be true in Rhode Island. There's this like strange framework that we get to test things out. And I don't really have a question or a comment on it, besides the fact that I just find that interesting. It's interesting how that works out.
Yep.
Well, that is a great response. Just a simple, easy response.
Yeah.
I also think that the three of us are long overdue to get together and enjoy a meal at the same time.
Yes.
Because we're three people who all enjoy a delicious meal, whether it's
We've had
around a
some good
table.
food.
Some really good food, right?
Yeah.
What's
Oh,
so what's the restaurant right now that you are each missing? That if you could right now, you would love to go there and you would just drop crazy money to get some food there because you're missing it so much.
Outback Steakhouse.
Mine's actually a Chicago restaurant, a little just hole in the wall called Cilantro Grill. They just have the best street tacos. Oh, they're so good. And then you could get. I always joked about getting like a tray of 30 for $40. And I kind of want to do that.
Mine's
Just for me.
Everest Tikka. I miss my Everest Tikka. Every Sunday, me and Mike Rezel and oftentimes Ree and a lot of people in that group of friends will do lunch at Everest Tikka. It's just the best food, and I am missing that so much right now.
Well, now that my mouth is appropriately watering and I'm hungry to do something, Prairie, thank you so much for being a guest. We've been trying to get this. Oh, hey, we haven't talked about this. So apparently, like, you're buddies with Mark Ruffalo now?
Yeah, she knows the Hulk. Prairie knows the Hulk. That is so cool.
I have his number and everything. Yeah, we actually just texted the other day because he just was checking in on me. So
remember, he needs to battle Wolverine, and Wolverine should be wearing the brown suit. Remember that.
I gotta remember that brown suit. I'm writing it down.
What if you like have drastically changed it? What if you're undermining like Mark Feige?
Kevin Feige?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
No, Mark Feige, his brother.
If we ever see Wolverine in the brown suit, I'm totally taking credit for it, even though I know it's not me, because the Marvel Studios, that they know what they're doing and they're steeped in the history. But I kind of felt both guilty, but I was like, worth it at re-giving, because I kept bugging Prairie about, I need you to tell Mark this, and then he needs to understand this. And she's like, Tucker, okay, it's nice to see you too. How is your family? And I'm like, to hell with them. Remember, they need to fight it. They're going after the Wendigo in Canada, and that has to be part of the storyline.
It is true. It's very
Next
true.
time you do talk to him, ask him, did he know how bad Shutter Island was when he was making it? Or was it only after he finally saw it that he realized how bad it was?
Maybe we can get him to come to our film festival for something. He's kind of in the mood to do like independent and, documentary, not documentary. What am I thinking of? Smaller studio films, I think. So he's cool.
In all seriousness, how did you two get connected?
So actually, this happened in 2018 when the Supreme Court decided to stay a decision. That means they decided not to make a decision yet on the North Dakota voter ID requirement that was taken to the Supreme Court. So, and then later on they upheld it. But at the time, because it didn't get overthrown or thrown out, like the tribes then had to make a decision on how to help equip the voters with the proper identification. A lot of infrastructure issues there. 911 is the administrator for addresses in rural communities. So 911 is relatively new to the tribal communities in North Dakota. So a lot of places didn't have official addresses. People had PO boxes or they had rural addresses that wouldn't work on IDs. So we just had to equip folks. And to mobilize effectively, we needed to draw people out to get educated about their rights and voting rights and specifically. And because I ran the Native Vote in the past in North Dakota, I had a lot of tribal connections. But our biggest issue was like, how can we actually draw people to an event? And Mark, and this started actually like with Dave Matthews. Dave Matthews was like, well, I'll go to Standing Rock and I'll do a concert and we can do voting, like know your rights stuff there. And then other celebrities just kind of signed on. And Mark's like, you know what? I've got a week. Like, let's go to every community that we can. And so I was tasked with kind of organizing our little bus tour, and we spent over a week together in North Dakota on a bus, taking pictures, stopping at different locations, and just having a really cool time. He's super dope and very chill and incredibly generous. I don't know if you guys remember, I was really sick last spring.
That's right.
I spent my last birthday in a hospital in North Carolina, and he called and just check in. And he was like, "Man, you go hard for everything, don't you? I mean, like you almost died." And I was like, "I know, I almost died, but I'm coming back." And apparently, I complained about food. So he sent me like, I think it was like $200 on Apple Pay. He's like, "Get yourself a nice meal."
Nice.
And yeah, he was my first, like the first friend to actually call me while I was hospitalized. So it was super cool. He's a very, very down to earth guy, and but that's how we met. And his love for those who are underserved is genuine, and he wants to use his spotlight as much as he can to really pass it on to give shine to others. But he's getting better at balancing that with his own family and personal life, so he's not overwhelmed by that need. But yeah, he's a really cool dude. I love him.
Awesome.
Thanks for throwing some real shade at us too by saying your only friend to get a hold of you right away was Mark Ruffalo. The rest of us were busy. We were trying to save the DC cinematic universe at the time, Prairie. We were busy. Okay.
You can still send me money for Apple Pay. I'll take it.
Hey, Prairie, if people want to like follow you, do you have like a Twitter account and people can see what you're up to?
Oh my gosh, my Twitter account is very embarrassing right now, but totally follow me if you want. It's all my handles are the same, so they're all at Ms. Prairie Rose, MSPRAIRIEROSE. No dots, no spaces, stuff like that. At Ms. Prairie Rose, on Instagram, on Twitter. And on Facebook, I have a public page and a personal page, but, whatever you want to do. But yeah, Twitter, I've been trying to do like social distancing PSAs today. So if you go over there and look, I'm just kind of throwing people out for social distancing, which is good. People keep trying to pick me up, and I'm like, I'm staying home. I'm staying home. I'm staying home.
Yeah, you can't pick me up. I ain't going nowhere.
So yeah, I have a picture of like Mark Ruffalo and Obama, Jason Momoa, Piper Perabo. Some of these people I've actually met, right? Like, I've only done like half a dozen, but yeah, that's my Twitter today is like social distancing PSAs.
That's pretty awesome. Also, when you talk to Piper Perabo next, ask her when she was making the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, did she know it was going to be as bad as it was when she finally saw it?
Piper's really cool. Like, she's somebody who, she's super dope. She's somebody who took her activism, advocacy to another level. She's like, I'm just going to hang out at, all of these things and just learn for a year or two, and then I'll start being more vocal. Like, she really took the time to make an investment and build relationships in the community that she wants to be more vocal for, to like earn trust and, bring that spotlight in a very different but real way for communities who need it. So she's super dope too. But
that's awesome.
we'll try to get him to the film festival, JJ, and you can ask him all those questions.
Oh, good. Fantastic. I also feel like if I was face to face with Piper Perabo, I would shut down because I truly am like a big fan of hers. I've had a huge crush on her since Coyote Ugly. And like, she's got great movies that nobody has gone out there to see, which is really unfortunate. Because she's very talented when it comes to her timing and comedic works, but she's got some great dramatic work out there. She did a movie with I can't think of her name, the woman who played Megan in Mad Men, that is just so friggin' good. Wish I could remember what the title of it was. And then like one of her first movies is maybe one of the best, like it's not a parody. What would you call this? It's called White Boys, and it was made like in the late 90s, and it was about the fact that these guys in rural America thought that they could be like big time rappers, and they had appropriated black culture, but they had no business doing it. Oh, it is such an amazing movie. I remember getting a VHS tape of it and being like, this is glorious. So, but you don't have to tell her all of that. I'm sure she listens to JJ Meets World, so she'll
Probably.
catch up with it.
I'll definitely encourage her to listen to it.
There you go. Hey, Prairie, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we can make time for each other.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. This is for Prairie and Prairie only. Do you remember when you had to call me into the office at the Fargo Theater to ask me whether or not I had been messing around with a copier? That was one of the more awkward conversations of my entire life.